Okay, Jim, we're ready to go.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Land Division Committee on October 8th, 2024. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests from either of the members? I have none.
I have none.
Okay. So I have a motion that the minutes of the Land Division Committee meeting held on August 13th, 2024 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That motion is carried. I have a second motion moved by Doug James, second by Stephen Lewis, that the agenda be approved as presented. All in favor? And that one's carried. So we can move right along to our first applications. Just a couple of little reminders. If you're making a presentation, please come up and use one of the mics. You got to push the button to turn it on and push it off after so we don't get any feedback. And Cindy, do you want to start with introducing the first application to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applications, there's three applications for new lots, and these are B23060, B23061, and B23062 for the creation of three new lots in the Township of Lanark Highlands. These applications were submitted back in April of 2023. The preliminary review was done and delegated authority report was first issued back in September of 2023. The applicant had some concerns regarding the nature of the studies that were required. In the course of doing that review, we clarified with the township that only B2360, which is the single lot, that one required the geotech, but not a hydro-G. But the other two lots, B23061 and B23062, did meet the requirements under the OP policy to need a hydro-G study. And that was proposed as a condition of consent because that was back before we were requiring those to be done up front. So we did clarify and amend the delegated authority report in April of 2024 to clarify that the studies, the hydro-G was required only for the two lots and the geotech was required for the other lot. There were still some concerns regarding those conditions. And so when I met with the applicants at the end of July, it was decided we would come to Land Division so we could review it and get a decision. At the time, we also discussed, because there's new official plan policies in place with Lanark Highlands relating to the hydro-G criteria, that the two lots still did qualify for the need to have a hydro-G study, but there might be some amendments to the lot that could be configured so that they could avoid having to do the hydro-G. In other words, one of the easiest workaround would be to make at least one of the lots larger than 2 hectares, and that would take it out of the hydro-G requirements. So we did encourage the applicant to go back to the township and look at perhaps reconfiguring those one or two of those lots so that they could avoid the hydro-G. Unfortunately, I didn't hear until this morning, just before the meeting, that there was some discussion back and forth with the township in terms of whether or not hydro-G was required. I did just clarify with Forbes on the phone. He's sending me an email that to avoid the hydro-G, he is still saying that the lot, at least one of the lots, should be more than 2 hectares. So I think there was some confusion there, and I apologize about that. I'll check my email, but in the meantime, we are recommending approval of these applications with the conditions set out in the report, including the studies that we have recommended.
Okay, thank you. And I see the applicants are here. Did you want to make a presentation to our committee? Oh, yes, you can. No, we're pretty flexible here. If you'd like to come up and chat with us or make some suggestions or answer any questions, we'd be happy to swear you in and let you do that. Whether you told us in advance or not, doesn't matter. This is the day of the hearing.
Okay.
So just before, as we're getting going here, you're John?
I'm John.
Yes. Okay. I'm Jim, and Doug and Steve. So I'll have to get you sworn in. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you in these proceedings shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. So if you had any information that might help us, please provide it, and we may have some questions for you. They're not going to be too detailed, but if you, please feel free to say what you want to say or ask us. We'll try and answer what we can.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if you can answer any of the questions or not. Maybe I should be asking Mr. Forbes first or Mr. Simon first. Two last lots that has to be expanded, or whether my lot 60 could be expanded as opposed to those two. And so to avert the having to do the hydrology study. And the soil study still has to be done on lot 60 as I believe. I don't know what the soil study is. I haven't looked into it deep enough to know, but I guess you just really can't answer any of these questions. It's more through Mr. Simon.
It is, but I think we can probably try to answer some of them. The geotechnical evaluation is really going and looking at the lot and making sure that the place that someone's going to build a home has suitable soils to build a home. So I don't know what the lot, I haven't been out, I haven't seen it. It can be something that's pretty simple to do. If there's a nice high dry area to build on, then you can designate that area through a small report and that's done. If you don't have that, then they typically look at doing some test pits to make sure there's adequate bearing capacity for house, septic, so on and so forth on the lot. So it's really just to make sure there's an adequate building location based on the fact that all anybody's got to look at is some maps. Nobody other than you has walked the property and understands it as well as you do. So it's typically not that big a deal, but there is a cost associated with you, and I'd hate to guess at those costs nowadays. Cindy, can you answer perhaps the other question?
I think the question in terms of which lot needed to be made bigger, definitely not the B60, the one that's the standalone, because it would, in order to have relief from the OP policies, it would have to be one of those two up, like B61 or B62. Now, in terms of which one, I don't think it matters unless there's some topographical sort of logical situation that would make sense to make one larger than the other. But it would have to be one of those two, I think, in order to avoid the policies under the new official plan.
And there is a fee to having to expand one of those lots, because you're telling us we have to expand one, right?
That's a good question. If it's a condition of consent that they have to make the lot bigger, can we avoid having to recirculate and all that? I don't think we would need to recirculate.
No. If it's a non-material adjustment in the lot, I don't think it's going to be a significant issue. But how much larger do we have to go here?
0.02 1.02 to 2 hectares.
But
Yeah, so the existing lot is proposed as 1.02 hectares, and he would have to go to 2 hectares.
And the question is whether we need to renotice or whether that
Yeah.
can be done as a condition.
Yeah,
I think as long as the committee's satisfied and we put it as a condition that one of the lots be enlarged to X size, then it's clearly contemplated by the committee that the lot will be larger. So we'll just look for that to be referenced in the reference plan.
yes, Stephen. Use your mic, please.
I got a question here. If one of the lots is increased, it's fine, but why does it have to be one? Should both lots? The other lot still hasn't changed. Why are they asking for only one lot to be increased in size?
The way that Lanark Highlands has written their policies in their official plan in terms of how they call or trigger hydro use.
You've explained it quite well. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it should be up to the committee whether it's recirculated or not. I don't think it needs to be recirculated. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but so can we approve that with that lot being one of the lots being extended, the applicant's choice? And will there be probably another fee because there'll be a new application? Well, there'll be some kind of a fee? No?
No, it'll just be an amendment to the current plan. The other option is, keep in mind too, the only reason this is before the committee is because the applicant had some concerns about the conditions. So if everybody's on the same page that yeah, we just need to enlarge one lot and he just needs some time to figure out which way that works best for him, then we can just, when we get that revised plan, approve it as a delegated authority. There's no neighbor objection or any other reason why it needs to be adjudicated by this committee. So you could defer today. We work through the details. Everybody's on the same page. And then once we're ready, we just issue it as a staff delegated.
So the only question is the applicant can do a hydro G and leave them both small or make one bigger and avoid the hydro G.
That sounds to be the case.
And it can be finished up today. Right?
You could issue a decision with the condition that the applicant enlarge one of the two side-by-side lots to over the 2 hectare threshold, or defer it. We work through the issues because everybody's on the same page, and we'll do it as the delegated authority, whatever your pleasure.
Thank you. I guess it's your decision, sir.
I have no problem making the one lot to a 2 hectare size. To get this moving ahead. The only other question I still have, I don't know, you said that the soil study was to make sure that the ground was suitable to be able to have a home put on it?
Yes, that's the purpose of it.
I don't know what I know it doesn't matter what it costs for it because this is the land division committee. This is supposed to be here for everybody. Okay, I understand that, but it's a very high, it's one of my highest lots in my property. And there's absolutely no way you're not going to be able to get a house in there. For sure, it's 550 feet deep. It's over 200 feet wide. It's
I don't disagree with you a bit, John. I think what's probably happening is some mapping that was done that's based off of air photos and old contour plans shows that there's a wetland on part of the property and they want to cover their behind to make sure that there's an adequate buildable site and that's where it's built on. So that's the requirement. I would hope that it's not a lot of expense, but there will be expense and it does take time to get it done.
Yeah, I understand that. It just seems very strange that that was the one that you'd picked. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever, it's great. You're going to accept it. Let me go have my severances. I just got to make the one lot 2 hectares and everything else goes ahead.
And if I can, I do have Forbes' email now, so maybe I'll just for the clarification. Yeah, okay. So Forbes said this is a follow-up to recent correspondence regarding the above noted consent applications. B 2360 does not require a hydro G because it is not near any other lots. B 2361 and 062 need a hydro G given multiple lots less than 2 hectares in size. If one of the lots was increased in size to 2 hectares, a hydro G would not be required. As matters stand, B 2361 and 62 should have a condition requiring hydro G. B 2360 does not need a hydro G. I hope this clarifies. So that is what he sent to me this morning. And the other issue with the geotech on B60 was, I think, due to the presence of organic soils.
So I think, John, there's a couple of options available. One, the committee could entertain approving it today, and I think we probably would, with the condition that one of the lots needs to be made 2 hectares in size or larger. The other option that you would have would be to go back and revise your plan to show one of the lots bigger. I don't believe that, no, we can tell our staff we don't need to recirculate that. And then the staff would have the ability to issue approval through what's called delegated authority. I tend to think we might as well get it done now, but I'm giving you that option.
Okay, so I just go out and tell Mr. Simon that I'm going to change one lot to 2 hectares. And
You have to revise your sketch
on my sketch.
with the application.
Okay, all right. So I'll make an appointment with him, go out and revise the sketch, and that should take care of this.
So what we would do if we make a decision today with the amendment that we would require one of the lots to be increased, we would issue a notice of decision with those conditions. Those conditions and that notice of decision will also they'll be sent to you. They'll also get sent to the township so that Mr. Simon's aware of what the discussion and the decision was today. And then, yes, then it would just be a matter of touching base with them to make sure that the proposed enlargement is suitable from his perspective as well.
Okay, sounds good to me. And if you want to know which lot I'm going to get made larger, it'd be lot 61.
Okay, that would help as well. If we could indicate which lot, then we can do that in our amended decision.
It's the easiest lot to do it with.
Any other questions, Doug?
I think it's been resolved to John's satisfaction that one of the lots will be increased to 2 hectares, and that's certainly my recommendation to him and to the committee that it be resolved today and not be deferred by having that condition be put in. I do have a question with respect to two of the options, but do you want me to do that, Jim, now? Can we somehow combine options 10 and 11? They both speak to the geotech study, and if they could be combined and maybe even avoid the need for a development agreement in number 11. But if it is going to be required that there be a development agreement registered on title, then why can't we combine that with with number 10? And I guess then the geotech study is also registered on title if it's part of the development agreement. I just don't see the need for both 10 and 11.
Cindy?
Whether we keep them separate or together, I don't think it matters too much from our perspective. But the geotech study would inform the development agreement. So I don't think the entire geotech study would be registered on title. Maybe excerpts would be put into the development agreement to, depending on which sections are relevant to any restrictions that have to be put on title. So we could combine those two conditions and say that the geotech study requires the entering into a development agreement, then that can follow.
I think it's probably a good idea to put the development agreement on title because it includes our clause that the requirement that the county and the land division committee not be liable, not be responsible with respect to the quantity of the water. So it would be good if that development agreement could be there.
So is it just for future reference to put those two together, Doug? Is that what you're thinking? And we just leave it as it is for today?
I think that they should be combined, those two. And if there is going to be a development agreement, then the development agreement will also refer to the geotech study.
Are you okay with that, Stephen? And you've got that in your notes, Cindy?
Yeah, we can certainly combine those.
Okay, my other suggestion would be when we get to the options for B23061 and 062, that perhaps we scroll down to the condition number 11 and provide another alternative in that one, that being that if one of the lots is made to be in excess of 2 hectares in size, the scoped hydro-G evaluation will not be required, and we can leave the rest in case someone decides at some point not to do that, but I think that would satisfy that. Members agree with me on that approach?
I agree.
Cindy, does that look all right with you?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the best way to handle it because it does leave those options open. Yep.
And I think it's the easiest. It's just a pretty simple little one-line addition in there. So now, Mr. Cole, did you understand all that we've just said?
Not 100%. What I'm thinking you're saying is if I decide that to heck with it, I'm not going to do the extra big lot there for you, that I got to do the hydrology study.
That's correct. Yes. And we'd leave that flexibility. I expect to make the lot bigger, but that'll be your decision. And you
Yeah,
can
but I have
work
to
that
make
out over the next couple of years while you're getting it registered.
It'll have to be over 2 hectares. The one lot.
That's
Which would
correct.
be lot
Yes.
number 61.
Yes.
Okay. And just before I agree to everything here written down on paper, this the diversity of the soil study that you're talking about, if I get it done by, let's say, McIntosh and Perry, you're not going to take and turn and send it to somebody else and have it redone by another company and I have to pay for it too, right?
I don't believe that the normal to do peer reviews of a geotechnical evaluation, but Michael, I've never heard of that. It's different from more detailed studies, but I haven't heard for that situation.
No, if it was really complex and there was concerns, we might, but I highly doubt that'll be the case here. On the geotech, I think the approach will be to talk to the local township first through Forbes and just say, look, can we start with a scoped assessment? Can we have somebody walk the property and provide a professional opinion? That might satisfy the issue if it is indeed high and dry and it is an organic soils mapping error, because it is highly prone to irregularities in my experience. And that may be enough. But if they say, no, we want somebody to do a few test pits, then you can figure out what that scope looks like. But don't go to MacPerry first and say, I need a geotech study, and they go out there and do the world, because that may not be what's required to satisfy this condition. So I think we figure it out, take it off in small pieces first. Okay.
So in other words, go and speak with Mr. Simon and see what he wants done and go from there first.
For sure. I'd ask him whether or not a scoped assessment, as an initial step might be the most prudent approach, just so you're not going too far with the study further than you need to. That's all.
Okay.
Okay. I'll get you to turn your mic off if we're done there. So I've got a motion that's moved by Stephen Lewis and seconded by Doug James that applications B2360, B2361, and 2362 be approved, subject to the conditions in the planning report as amended. We've discussed the amendments in a fair bit of detail today, so I'm not going to go through them again. Any questions on that from either of the members? All in favor? So that's carried. You'll be notified in the mail and probably by email as also of the approval with revised conditions. I would suggest maybe you take that once you get it and make an appointment with Forbes Simons and sit down with them and sort out exactly what you're going to do and get your study sorted out and so on. Does that make sense, John?
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, thank you very much for attending today, and I hope we've got something that works for everyone.
Well, it feels like it's heading in the right direction anyways. All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, I guess we can move on to our deferred application. Cindy, do you want to introduce that?
Okay, so yes, the next application is B24038, and this is for Robert Bentley Crane on 1 Rogers Road at the intersection of Rogers Road and Peter Street. This application came to committee in August, and there was some discussion with respect to the issues about the approach for the potential bridge realignment for the Kaivan development at the golf course. So at that time, the decision was to defer to the next land division meeting to give staff and the applicant and their agent some opportunity to explore options. Since that meeting, there has been some discussions, and the town has met with the peer reviewer and the traffic professionals. And they are now satisfied that the entrance for the retained lands will not interfere with the with any potential realignment needed for the road and the bridge. It is likely that that entrance will need to be located at the intersection of Lester Lane, which is where the existing entrance is for the severed lands. So we are recommending approval of the application. We have amended the conditions to contemplate the potential need for a mutual driveway easement if that entrance does have to be right where the existing one is. That's optional. It's just there if it's needed. It's not necessarily required at this point. We just wanted to build in some flexibility in the conditions to contemplate that. The other amendment we did make administrative to the conditions was to refer the road widening conditions will only impact the retained lands, not the severed lands. So we did clarify that as well. So with those changes, we are recommending approval of the application.
Okay, thank you. And Tracy, I see you're here, so we'll start by swearing you in. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you in these proceedings shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I reviewed the traffic analysis that Kaivan had done for the street and the the bridge crossing here to the golf course. And then I reached out to Kaivan myself and talked to their senior planner, and they were quite aware of this application, didn't have any concerns. We talked about the bridge crossing actually swings to the north and outside of this road allowance itself. And they've got a design contemplated, and it was clear that the proposed entrance location that we sketched for the retained lot here will be right across from Luster Lane. And they didn't have any concern that there was going to be a conflict. So that was my first step. And then, as Cindy said, we discussed with the town and they seem satisfied. So I have reviewed the conditions. I was worried about the road widening for the severed lot. If you know that property, the house is right at the corner. So I appreciate that that condition has been amended, that the road widening would just apply to the retained lot. So otherwise the conditions are as I anticipated. So thank you.
Any questions from either of the members? Doug?
In the options, just as clarification, I don't think I've seen in numbers 10, what's the certificate of official? What is that? I haven't seen that term before.
That's basically the schedule that the Secretary Treasurer stamps once the conditions are met. So it's the schedule to the transfer that sets out the legal description with our consent. We call
Okay.
it certificate of official.
Certificate of, it is called a certificate of official, not a certificate of approval or something like that.
Probably interchangeable, but
Okay.
quite often certificate of official is the one that I've seen most frequently. But
Okay.
schedule for severance endorsement is again another term we use.
And my last one is in number 13, change the word township to town.
I'm sure happy we have you here, Doug. We pick up on those things that Stephen and I would probably have missed, right? Anything from you, Stephen? I'd like to thank staff for going out and getting this thing resolved and working with the applicant. I think that's great. We were pretty sympathetic, I believe, last meeting with the applicant in this regard, and people have got things done, and I think that's wonderful. So having said that, I do have a motion that application B 24038 be approved subject to the conditions presented in the planning report. All in favor?
As amended.
As amended, yeah, just a typo. I don't know if I even needs that, but anyway, as amended is fine.
Very good.
So thanks, Tracy, and thanks for your involvement in getting this solved as well. Okay, Cindy, we looked at your report on delegated authority. So you got it up there. Is there anything you want to highlight to our committee members, or anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to thank Christy for putting together all of these stats. She's the spreadsheet guru. So I just really high level. So obviously the delegated authority didn't start until partway through 2022. So it's kind of skewed in terms of the percentages, but in 2022, 11.4% was approved via delegated authority. But if you really just look at the time frame where delegated authority was in place, it was 34.6% that went to delegated authority. In 2023 was 30% approved via delegated authority. 2024, the percentage is up to 50. What we've done is since about April, May, we have tried to allocate a little bit more time and effort in terms of analyzing the public comments that come in and resolving those to a point where we can not, that used to automatically trigger it to go to land division. So a lot of the public comments are able to be resolved with a little bit of effort and communication. So that has certainly dropped the number of public comments that have triggered land division. We've also changed how we interpret the delegated authority bylaw. Previously, if an application required as a condition a rezoning, we would bring it to land division. The way the bylaw is worded is it does allow us to consider a delegated authority if the rezoning is considered as a condition. So that has removed quite a few from the list and has limited the amount that we do need to bring to land division. So I think you'll see that there'd be more done through delegated authority as we sort of work through the system, but that's sort of high level. I don't know if you have any questions. We can try to work through them.
Either of you guys have any questions? Doug?
I don't have any questions. It's just a compliment to the staff that so much of this is now going through delegated authority. It makes it so much easier for the applicants to have it done that way than having to come to what may be a contentious proceeding as far as the Land Division Committee is concerned. It's much more the applicant is much more able to negotiate with the staff and make it much more easier and quicker as far as the decision, the final decision is concerned through the delegated authority. So it's a compliment to the staff that it's working out so well.
One thing I will mention is it is quicker in the sense that we're not having to wait for another land division committee meeting to schedule that and make sure we can meet the notice provisions. It is somewhat challenging to balance prioritizing because with the deadline of land division, you have to have certain reports done in being able to meet those deadlines, which will then mean sometimes the delegated authority reports get put on the back burner. So that is always a constant struggle that we're kind of working with. But you're right. I think it does tend to speed things up, not having, and it gives the option. So we present the conditions to the applicant. If they don't like them, then yes, we can take them to the land division, but quite often they will approve them ahead of time so that they can get going. The other thing that I did notice, and sorry, this was on the second slide and I didn't think to mention it the first time, but what I did find is that most lot additions can be processed through delegated authority because they don't tend to have a lot of public comments and don't usually require rezoning. So that we really in 2024, only 2 lot additions, I think so far have come to land division versus 22. So that's good. That takes out a lot of those simpler applications. And the category of other, just in case you were wondering, that includes easements, technical severance, and that type of thing. We have not included any data with respect to validation certificates, but I have had a lot of inquiries for validation certificates in the last little while. So those are processed through delegated authority because they're not contentious. So if they were contentious, we would bring them, but different criteria to evaluate those. So they tend to be more administrative.
I think we could probably consider, or the county could consider, reducing the number of scheduled meetings that this committee has, given that there's so much that's happening under delegated authority. I know there's always a concern that we might create an undue hardship on an applicant if we have a delay, but I think as an initial phase, we could probably have half as many meetings. In my mind, I'd be interested in the comments from our other members. Your thoughts, Doug?
I agree.
Stephen? Yeah, and I think it's been difficult for that simple small guy to understand the process for a while, but it's probably now catching up, I think is the way I'll put it. And we're getting, like, the easy ones are done. I'm sorry, guys, but the real simple severances are, for the most part, completed. So now we're got more complex issues, more complex mapping of the areas. There's just more things that come up to be looked at. So it's not as simple as it used to be. But again, I think we could be looking at having less of our meetings, but I don't see an alternative to eliminate the Land Division Committee at this point. I just think it's less meetings is probably be the best next evolution as we go forward.
I would tend to agree. I think you need the body of the Land Division Committee just in case to give people an opportunity or an outlet, unless council reconstituted it as one of their own authorities as a kind of a side to a committee. But that would be a conversation for another day. In terms of the number of meetings, we can kind of we'll certainly kind of play it by ear in this interim period. You know, if there's only one application, maybe we'll, you know, as long as it doesn't create an undue hardship on the applicant in terms of their timing needs, we'll say, okay, you know, we're going to push this out 2 months for the next meeting and just not have a meeting. To formally move to bi-monthly meetings, we would probably need to talk to the clerk's office about amending the terms of reference for the committee. So we can also kind of have that conversation and float that idea and see how that goes as well. But we hear you. We don't want to pull you in for, you know, one application if it's not needed on an urgent basis. And just to your point too, Stephen, it's, you know, the conditions that we're putting on as delegated authority are no different than the conditions that you guys are applying here at Land Division Committee. You know, there might be one or two unique things about the file that require specific language, but I know Cindy certainly goes out of her way, and as do I, to make sure that people are fully informed as to what they're agreeing to. And then if something should pop up in the future and they say, oh, I didn't know that that's what that meant, you know, then we try to work with them to figure out what the flexibility is on that condition, or they could always, you know, I guess request formally to amend a condition, although there's no appeal rate on that. We would certainly want to hear people out and not just say that is what it is, too bad, right? We certainly try to work with folks.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. Certainly, the September meeting was able to be postponed or canceled because of lack of applications by staff. And if that can happen, I don't need any significant notice of me not needing to be here. So certainly if staff decides that there are just not enough applications to go ahead and they aren't time sensitive, I'm happy with it being arranged by staff that a meeting be canceled or postponed.
I think for now, that's probably the way to go, but I'm thinking in the future that it's likely worthwhile to look at, you know, amending the bylaw so that we have, and whether it's quarterly or every second month, I'm not sure, Michael, whatever works out. I know some of the townships in Frontenac County, they've got their meetings set up so they're quarterly. Seems to work okay. Once people recognize that's when the meeting was going to be, then stuff gets done for that meeting, but whatever works. I just think it saves a little bit of expense. It's not a big savings because you don't pay us very much, but it saves a little bit anyway.
And I want to make sure you guys understand you're highly valued for the role that you play in this process. We're not trying to cut you out, because when you're needed, right? You know, people don't see us as an impartial body in the sense that we're here as staff and we're implementing the policies of the county, whereas you guys have a different role to play. And when contention comes about, we need somebody to adjudicate that. And that's what your role is. And it's a very important one. So, you know, we do appreciate your work.
And I can almost certainly tell you that there will be a November meeting.
Well, sometimes people need their day in court, and this is better than going to court, right? So I understand that, Michael, and I agree with that. I think there is a role. Maybe sometime in the future, it might be something that a committee of council does, but for now, I think this is probably better for all parties considered the way we're doing it. So moving on, is there anything other in our other items there?
I have nothing else, no.
Michael, anything else you wanted to bring up?
Nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion that's Moved by Stephen Lewis, second by Doug James, that the meeting does now be adjourned at, it's 10:40 a.m. Carried.